Hello and welcome back to the Trick Play Podcast on the Fresh Take Network. I'm Simon Chiskovsky here with Caleb Peterson, and shortly we'll be breaking down all the sports-related news, rumors, and drama that you will want to hear about. Starting off, we'll be talking about the Justin Fields trade and some NFL rule changes that have been proposed. Then we'll get into the NHL side of that, talk about some of their rule changes because we're in a changes mood, whatever you want to call it. We're talking about the changes.
We're in a rules mood.
All you
big legislature fans out there.
Oh yeah, boy. And we're talking about the NFL rules, NHL rules, legislature.
If you're one of those people man, I hate sports, but I love rule books. Oh boy, do we have an episode for you.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be killer. Well, we're also going to talk about the Penguins trying to contend, apparently, with Sidney Crosby's final years with the team, however long he decides to stay. If he decides to retire there, who knows? They will be trying to spend it by trying to make the playoffs. Then lastly, we talk about the Coyotes potentially finally being moved out of Arizona if they do not win a land auction, which, knowing how things have looked in the past, isn't looking too promising, which we talk about in that segment. Make sure to check us out on YouTube, Fresh Take Network, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, as we have new content coming out every single week on each and every one of those platforms. And lastly, before we get into it, I figured we might as well just throw out a quick thank you, because in the last couple weeks-ish, things have been growing a lot. I think we've doubled in subscribers over the last week and a half, which is absolutely nuts. So thank you so much.
We love seeing the numbers go up.
Yeah, it makes my brain go ooga booga.
It's very funny. We were looking at this before. I'm gonna.
There it is.
That's kind of funny.
I can throw. There we go. Yeah. Isn't that view spike nuts?
Oh boy, what the fuck were we doing? What the fuck were we doing over here?
Screaming in the wind, my friend. Just screaming in the wind. Again, thank you.
All you had to do was fucking talk about Jake Paul.
I know. What the hell? Yeah. It's very cool. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully the growth continues because it's very cool to be able to argue with everyone in the comments about all the dumb things I say. So thank you.
So after we did our big NFL offseason video last week, there was one headline that kind of slipped past us because I think it happened a day after maybe we recorded that. That is the Bears trading Justin Fields to the Steelers. It's something we've been talking about a long time in terms of what the Bears are going to do at quarterback. Are they going to keep Justin Fields? Are they going to try to draft Caleb Williams and develop him from there? And it seems like that's the route they're taking. The trade value for this is insanely low, I think, and I'll get into that more. It was only a conditional 6th-round pick. The condition being that it'll turn into a 4th-round selection if Fields plays in 51% of the Steelers snaps this season. So essentially, if Fields is the starter for the majority of the season, which again is not a guarantee because of the Russell Wilson signing we talked about last week. What do you think about this trade, Simon? Specifically, we'll start with for the Steelers.
I know a lot of people. I've seen a lot of people diss this very, very quickly, just on the fact alone that there's a very good chance he doesn't start. Like you said, I could totally see a world where Russ holds on to that starting spot the entire season, and we're just going to see a season basically wasted for Justin Fields. But honestly, I think it's a good opportunity for him. I don't know if he necessarily needs it. I still think that he's probably good enough to just slide right into that starter spot if Russ was not here. But that being said, I don't hate it. I do think it's kind of smart by Pittsburgh because you're kind of just doing the safest thing. With a team that doesn't necessarily have to win this year as far as I'm concerned, I still think they'll be okay next year. So I could totally see a world where they run it with Russ this year, run it with Fields next year. And I think that would work out pretty well for them. I don't know. I don't really hate it.
Yeah, I really love it for the Steelers. I'll get into this more on the Bears side, I think. But I think that draft capital is insanely low for someone of Justin Fields' talent. I think that I don't know what happened with Justin Fields in terms of his perception, but he went from someone who I consider to be like a borderline top 15, top 10 quarterback. I know I'm higher on him than most people. He's up and down, yes. Like he's not going to be consistently great, but especially like at the end of the season, he was playing really well. Again, we brought up this example in previous podcasts. It's like the Sam Darnold trade. Sam Darnold, after completely flaming out in New York, literally doing nothing, he fetched a second round pick. And it's the same kind of thing where it's like it's a high draft pick prospect that you think you can rehabilitate. Well, Justin Fields has already shown promise. I just don't think he's gotten the right opportunity yet. And so to get him for a sixth round pick is absolutely insane. And I really love what the Steelers are doing in terms of like they're throwing darts and just seeing what'll hit. There's a point that was made on a podcast I listened to this week in terms of the Steelers are never going to be, as long as Mike Tomlin's there, they're never going to be a team that is able to draft a quarterback in the top like 5 of a draft. They're never going to get like that Caleb Williams, Drake May type prospect because Mike Tomlin has literally never had a losing season. So this is probably the best way you can go about fixing your quarterback problem, because drafting a quarterback in the back end of the first has not worked. It rarely works. You look back to like Johnny Manziel, Paxton Lynch, and then obviously Kenny Pickett, the most recent example of that. There's obviously a few exceptions to that, Lamar Jackson, big one, but in general, most of the quarterback talent is kind of gone by then. So to be able to just kind of find guys that could potentially work out for you, get them on insane steals. Russell Wilson for $1 million, veteran minimum. Justin Fields for a sixth. And then if they don't work out, whatever. You didn't invest anything in them. And if they do, that's fantastic. Like you've set your franchise up for the next like however many years, especially in the case of Justin Fields.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you. I don't know if it's a perception thing, more of like the whole league knew that the Bears would be desperate to get rid of him. Like nobody was going to give him a second, right? Like, because why would you? Because if you know nobody in the league is going to give them a second, why wouldn't you wait for the price to get a little lower? And I do see the perception thing just thinking about it off the top of my head when you look at that Seahawks move as an example, right? Where we saw the Seahawks pick up Sam Howell, which, looking at it now, the way you got to think that they absolutely could have gotten Fields for around the same price, which I don't know. I almost think I would have liked more. I would have liked that quite a bit more, I think, just based on a potential thing.
More.
Yeah, and does make me think a little bit about just, you know what? Actually, I'm going to take that back. I actually could see it being a perception thing, but I do agree with you. I don't know if there's a lot of merit in it. I think that he still has a lot of potential. And like you point, I think that's also a good point on the late first round pick thing, because you're absolutely right. That has not worked out for many teams. It hasn't worked out for Pittsburgh, obviously, like with Pickett. I mean,
Pickett's gone now.
This is probably the best potential-wise quarterback they have had in their locker room since Roethlisberger. Holy crap. Like it's just been one of those things for the Steelers where they just haven't had a reason or a way really to bring in a quarterback who can be that with that kind of potential.
Yeah, and I mean even like you say since Big Ben, but it's since like 2016 Big Ben.
Yeah,
because
well exactly.
For the last maybe not 20. Philly was decent for a couple of years. I don't remember when exactly he fell off, but there were a few
2016,
like 2 to 3 years. Yeah, those last years like really good. But if I had to guess, but like there was a long time there where they were just kind of like dragging Big Ben's corpse out there to play football for them, and like it didn't really work. Like you could tell like he was not physically where he needed to be. So they really haven't had a good quarterback in like 6, 7, 8 years, probably closer to that. That's I don't know. This is a great move for them, and again, I just love it because of how low risk it is in terms of like if this doesn't work out, then whatever. Like you're still in so much of a better spot than you were last year. The one thing I will say that I think is interesting, and I think it'll be interesting to see how this dynamic plays out, that Justin Fields and Russell Wilson are kind of the same quarterback. in terms of style. Like, in a lot of ways, Justin Fields is like a young Russell Wilson
I was gonna
in terms of
say
how he plays the game.
not
Because he's
anymore.
not anymore. Oh
Yeah,
God, no.
yeah.
But, like, in terms of the way Russell Wilson would be playing in his prime, like that's kind of what Justin Fields emulates in
Yeah.
terms of like relying on his legs, good on deep shots, and not very good at throwing over the middle and a little bit smaller. As a quarterback,
How tall
that's
is
Russell
Fields?
Wilson. I think he's not as small as Russell Wilson.
I was gonna say
guess-
my ballpark would have been like
my guess
6'2",
is
6'3".
which for a quarterback is not.
It's not
tall.
short. Like that's about average.
Like six. It's like 6'2" is the. Oh, he's 6'3". He's taller than I thought.
That's what I thought. Which I mean,
scratch
honestly,
the short thing.
honestly, I don't think there's as much merit behind the short quarterback sucking thing as, like, I don't know.
Bryce Young.
Okay, fair enough. But Kyler Murray,
Yeah.
like it's I guess it's not looking as pretty now that Russ isn't as performing quite as well as he was a couple of years back. But I mean,
I think there was an overcompensation.
a little
where,
bit.
Like
little
nobody wanted a short quarterback, and then Russell Wilson was good, and
Oh!
then everybody wanted one.
Get that tiny guy who
The
can
short,
run.
athletic Yeah.
Yeah. No,
That other guy who runs like a toddler.
I think the Bears side is a lot more interesting because we're kind of seeing the locker room turn on the management a little bit now. We're seeing a lot of like quotes. I think
Yeah.
it was Cole Kmet. I have no clue what show he was on. I don't remember off the top of my head. But I just remember seeing him go out and talk about the fact that he was very disappointed to see Fields gone. And then we saw, I can't remember his name, off the one of the Bears corners. Oh, Jalen Johnson.
Jalen Johnson.
It was Jalen Johnson.
I
Yeah.
just pulled up the quote.
Okay, well, go right ahead.
He said Jalen Johnson said this is addressed to whoever the Bears pick with number one. I don't know who are they gonna pick.
I wonder.
He said you can't bring that Hollywood stuff into the building, especially not with guys who have played this game at a high level for consecutive years in the league. We're gonna see through it. What you did in college, the Hollywood. It's like, nah, you got to prove yourself. That stuff doesn't matter.
What are they referring to by the Hollywood? What is he not bringing? Like just like, because he's gonna bring the fame. Like what?
Yeah.
I mean,
In terms of like the selfisher and that, like, I don't know. I mean, I've never seen like Caleb
Okay.
Williams as a very like high on his own supply kind of guy. I don't know. If
I
there's
mean,
the
he hasn't
association with,
shown
like, him
he's a
being
team
USC.
player. But I almost feel I never looked at it as him being selfish more than I just looked at it as him protecting his own stock,
No,
which is smart.
No. And I do think,
Like when you're looking
I
at
think a lot of
potential.
it is his dad too.
Oh sure. But like I don't know. I feel like if I'm Caleb Williams reading that quote, I'm just like, all right, sure. Like I don't know why anyone
Yeah.
would care. I mean, it's not like
Yeah.
he's going to be the biggest ego in that locker room, even if he is all Hollywood or whatever the hell that means. Like
No.
there's always going to be a bigger ego, and I don't think he's going to be the one with
And
with
he-
the
again,
biggest
He
head.
doesn't seem like a big ego guy. He doesn't
No.
seem like
No,
a big ego guy. There's a completely different tangent, but the character assassination that people have been trying to do on Caleb Williams is insane to me. It's just so absurd. Oh my God, Caleb Williams paints his nails. Like, oh, he's gonna be a bust. Like, what an idiot guy. He paints his nails. He cried after he lost a game and was like hugging his mom. What a loser. Who is like? Why does this matter? Like, who cares that he paints his nails, and who cares that he like?
Oh my God,
Knows
guys!
that he
I
cared
heard.
about winning the
I was
game.
gonna say, oh my God, guys! Caleb Williams puts pineapples on his pizza.
Wow.
Instant 5th round.
It's the same kind of like people are saying, oh, like Caleb Williams is a diva. Like, oh my God, like, can you shut up? Like, would you rather have a guy who's like crying on the sidelines because he lost the game, or a guy who doesn't care and is like late to team meetings and shit? Like, I know which one I'd rather have.
Yeah.
It's just like, cut me a break with that stuff, frankly. Maybe I'm just on Twitter too much because I see that shit on Twitter all the time. It's like,
Yeah, you know, it could be
Caleb Williams is a
that.
diva. I don't actually know about his character. Like, I see him painting his nails, and I'm just like, oh, I don't know if that's an NFL football player. Fuck off.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a weird thing to judge talent on, you know? Does the painted nails... You know what? You know what? It might affect the weighting of his hand. Maybe we do have to
Oh
worry
my
about this,
God.
Caleb. It could be over
I'll make
for him.
another.
Deep ball gone.
If Caleb Williams' painted nails are definitively the reason he falls out in the NFL, I will
Oh, don't
chop
you
off one of
fucking
my
do
own
it.
fingers. So get an amputation. Like how
Oh.
confident I am. Oh my God.
Is it? It's just
Anyways,
becoming. It's just becoming like weekly. What's this craziest thing that you're gonna say? You're eventually one of these days. It went from like it's becoming an addiction. Like you went from jumping in the ocean
Yeah,
to
it's
jumping
very
in the
fun.
other ocean to jumping off your fingers. Like at what point does it like?
going
This-
to Slovenia as well.
Oh, that one, right? Yeah. If it's eventually you're just gambling. You're just you're maybe it's not Otani who's the gambling addict. It's
If I-
you.
If I ever go to a casino, it's not going to end well. It's a good thing. Trick Play's popping off. We're gonna get the AdSense money
Oh,
coming
Jesus
in soon,
Christ.
right? Like
Oh well.
support my gambling addiction.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting to see the character stuff because he just seems like the guy he seems fairly reserved in a lot of the stuff that I've seen of him. Where
Yeah.
it feels like a lot of people are putting just narratives on him, which, to be fair, it should be expected. Because I think
Yeah,
you kind of see that
right.
every single time. Every single time there's like a consensus number one type guy where there's always something, right? There's always something about them usually, and I don't
Yeah.
know. Like here, I mean, Caleb, it doesn't have to be a character thing either. Because I mean, think about it. When Banyama he was too skinny, and I was one of the people saying it. Like Connor Bedard, it was the fact he was too short to play center in the NHL. Like there's always something. There's always a nitpick. And I think that the fact that it's character for Caleb Williams when there's not a lot there kind of just shows that he is absolutely well-rounded. He is on the field exactly what you think he is, which is perfect. Like he is a number one type guy, so they're just like we got to find a thing to try and hit him with.
Yeah.
Oh, he hugged his mom and paints his nails. And to be fair, I've also seen that in the UFC side of thing with Israel Adesanya because he did the same shit and faced the same shit where it was he painted his nails and like went on a bunch of shows with that type of stuff and got a crap ton of hate of it. That's just the world we live in where people are going to judge for stuff like that. When you're
Painted
Twitter
nails,
sucks.
Who gives a shit?
I don't. Yeah, I was gonna
Live
say
your
live your life, do whatever you want. Like
your
it's
life, yeah.
yeah, like it's that's just Twitter for you. I don't know. The world we live in will never come around to a place where people will not judge for whatever the fuck. So
No,
I don't
that's
know.
true.
I don't care honestly. I don't think
Yeah.
he does either. So I mean, it's one of those things where it's just like whatever.
Yeah, he's gonna be a good quarterback. All this other shit is just like, yeah, it pisses me off. But I should probably just be on Twitter less because you're right. Twitter fucking sucks.
Yeah, I just take
not
everything
really.
I see on that app with a grain of salt usually.
Yeah, as you should.
Yeah.
If we want to like wrap up the Justin Fields stuff too, because for the Bears, they're gonna bring in Caleb Williams, and like we kind of just talked about, he's gonna be great. He's gonna be great. Like barring a collapse or some sort of bad coaching or something that we don't see right now, he's very likely going to be very good. So that's not necessarily the side of it that I'm mad about the Bears for. It's like, I don't know, man. A 6th round pick? That's such low compensation.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, we've been talking
know.
all offseason. It feels like over the last 2 months, we've just watched that price tag drop. It almost,
it
I
was
think
the
it got
first,
to the
and
point
then it
where
was the
they
second.
fire sold him. Like store was closed and they just wanted to get him off the shelf. Like it's just, I mean, there was no way they were going to get the price they wanted. I feel like, I want to say that I'm surprised, but honestly, when I saw the price tag they got, I thought they'd get a bit more. In my head, I probably would have thought like 3rd or 4th, and 4th being assured, right? Like that's kind of what I was thinking in my head. Seeing that they got a 6th is depressing as hell. And even like
It really
best
is.
case scenario for Fields and frankly the Steelers, honestly, if Fields ends up overtaking Russell Wilson in the first year that he's with in Pittsburgh, and they do get that fourth round pick, I mean, is that really that much better? Like, sure, it's a bit, it's a consolation prize, I guess, but it's like it's only
So
two
if,
rounds.
if Fields ends up playing that many snaps, he's probably already outplayed a fourth round pick's value, right?
Well, for that
It's
to have
literally
happened,
not-
for that to have happened, that would mean that he is outplaying Russell Wilson, which you can say whatever you want about how good Russ is. Like, barring injury, if he's outplaying Russ, then he's a franchise quarterback
Yeah.
for the Steelers, like, for the next 10 years. You just gave this,
Yeah.
and in return, you got a fourth round pick. Cool.
Yeah. Like,
Great job,
that's the
Bears.
thing. It's like if Caleb Williams does bust, which I think is not likely, and Fields plays well, like just think
This
about
is gonna look
how
bad.
badly that's going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I mean,
there's
bet on the sure thing as much as you want to. I remember when we first had this conversation on what to do about Caleb Williams, Justin Fields, what do you do in that situation? I remember being more on the fence than I am, especially now, because back then we were talking about a second or a first. We were talking about them getting an actual legit return, and which made more sense to me because I mean, why not gamble on a quarterback who might be generational, even if you think that you have a guy who could be potentially Pro Bowl or even like whatever, he could be good enough. Why settle for good enough, right? Was my logic when I was looking at it originally. Now it's, in hindsight, it feels so weird to have made that argument seeing what they actually got. Because it almost feels like they had like talked themselves into a corner and didn't have a backup plan for if the rest of the league just said, whatever. We don't need him. And now he's playing because they I honestly think they would have been better off keeping him as a backup. Like, screw, I know the media would have gone haywire, but like at least that way I don't even know. Like, it's just at least you could have done something.
At least you could have then, when the inevitable injury happens, flipped him for a considerably higher pick. Like, let's say, I'm not going to wish this on him necessarily, but let's say Aaron Rodgers goes down again.
Okay,
in,
buddy.
I said I'm not going to. But let's say like it could happen. It could happen to anybody, right? Like injuries happen. It's a part of the sport. It sucks. Especially last year, we saw that a bunch.
Yeah.
Let's say a team with playoff ambitions has someone go down. Like Justin Fields would be the first guy that I'd want if he's still on the Bears roster. And it's like at that point, if you're the Bears, now you've got leverage, and now you can probably flip a second.
Oh, absolutely.
That's what I'd be looking at. So Again, it probably wouldn't have been realistic because they probably would have destroyed the locker room.
Yeah.
Considering like having those two quarterbacks and like
No,
some guys are loyal.
But
to Fields, some guys are loyal
I
to
do see
Williams.
what you mean though, just in the fact that like if a star player goes down, like a star quarterback goes down, all of a sudden you have a guy who could absolutely fill in. Like, for example, and just to be clear, I'm not coming out and saying this. Let's say Connor McDavid goes down for the Oilers' career-ending injury. The first guy that I'd be going for is a guy like, with the skill of Justin Fields, Yeah. Not saying I want it to happen though.
Don't read into what I say. Don't read into what I say. The examples I bring up, they have no meaning in this.
Yeah, no, absolutely not at all. All right.
I am if you haven't watched this podcast before, I love Aaron Rodgers
with a fiery passion. Tunes into every Pat McAfee episode featuring
Oh
A-Rod.
my god. Oh my god. Fuck, the Aaron Rodgers has gotten the most mentions out of any athlete on this podcast just because I fucking rant about him on unrelated segments.
I don't know. Who have we talked about the most, do you think? That's a good question, actually. now I'm actually curious.
I think it's probably Rodgers just because he gets brought up in it when we're not talking about him.
I could also see it being like Mahomes or something, though. Just being like, I think it probably would be a football player, but I don't know if it'd be Rodgers.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, who knows who
Well,
would be.
I mean,
You never know.
the fucking loves attention and he gets it. So good for him, I guess. Anyways, good on the Steelers.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. I think that is the takeaway.
Good move. Good move. I will be excited to see how it plays
You
out.
traded nothing for a potential quarterback who could be the guy for your team for the next 10 years.
Guy.
Yeah. Like, that's... Yeah. I mean, even if he doesn't work out, what did you really lose, assuming the Bears don't draft a Hall of Famer with that 4th round pick, which, I mean...
They're not going to.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to happen.
Unless, like, bearing insane circumstances. I mean, the Steelers already won this one, so. Yep.
Yeah. All right. So to continue the discussion on the NFL, I don't know what it's the competition committee. So this happens like every year, where the competition committee, it's a bunch of executives from all 32 teams, and propose a bunch of new rules. You need 24 out of 32 votes to make a new rule. There's a bunch of interesting proposals this year. This is just for reference. This is where stuff like moving the extra point back, where that got approved, is in a meeting like this. Any sort of new rule change comes through this meeting, and there's 3 interesting ones, I think. I think the big one we can talk about, I think this will be the big one because it's probably has the highest chance of going through, is this change to the kickoff. And the kickoff has always been, I find, a very interesting and flawed play. It's very anticlimactic at this point, because of all the player safety stuff that's happening and trying to reduce collisions on kickoffs. More often than not, they turn into touchbacks. They've been incentivizing touchbacks and, well, making the game safer, which is awesome. It has made kickoffs a whole lot less interesting. So the NFL is considering the XFL model in terms of kickoffs, which would change it, because how this would work is, instead of an NFL kickoff where you've got one team on one side of the field, another team on the other side of the field, ball is kicked. As soon as the ball is kicked, they both run at each other. You're running the entire field at each other. That's where the injuries happen. In the XFL, you've got the kicker on one side, and then you've got both teams lined up where the ball will be. Both teams are not allowed to move until the ball is caught. And yeah, that's a great example of it. So they're lined up 5 yards away from each other. This reduces the chances, like the high-speed collisions, but you still have the ability to return a kickoff. And it leads to a lot more returns, too. I know they found in the XFL, I don't know if the USFL has the same kind of thing or something similar, but it was found to reduce injuries and also lead to more returns, which is kind of like the perfect happy medium. It's something that I think will probably get passed. I think it's probably like 50-50, but I'd be super excited to see it. I don't know about you, Simon.
Yeah, no, I actually think it's a good idea, too. I feel like it'd be... I guess I almost don't know what the other argument against it would be, I guess. Just in the sense that it's kind of just a no-brainer. Because like you pointed out, you said it best on that one, where it's just like more returns, less injuries. What else are you looking for, right? Yeah. I almost think the only reason they hadn't done it previously is just tradition, which I think holds back a lot of leagues in a sense, where things stick around when they probably shouldn't just because they've been doing it forever, which shouldn't be a very good excuse, except for fighting. Fighting is awesome. But in every other sense, it applies, usually.
Yeah.
Like, it's...
Yeah.
I mean, this is very similar. I mean, we talked about with the... Oh, God. I'm forgetting. The CEBL in the, the Canadian Basketball League. We talked about the... Yep, exactly. Like, we talked about the way that they were ending their games with, like, a targeted score and how that made the game more entertaining. I think this is just another one of those things where I don't know why they wouldn't change to it. It's the same thing. It's the same conversation we had back when we had that conversation, right? It's just, at what point is tradition not worth keeping when it's both less safe and less entertaining? Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
Again, Because the kickoff is literally the most anticlimactic play in sports because there's so much anticipation. It's how you start a game. It's right after a score. The crowd is hyped, and then the ball goes into the back of the end zone, and nobody cares. In this instance, at least you get the chance of a return.
It got so bad, and I guess they've probably been doing this forever at this point, that I think I've seen players run out the back of the end zone as a tradition. Like the defensive team or the kicking team or whatever, run out the back of the opposite end zone as a tradition because that's been built with how many teams just don't do anything with the kickoff, which is kind of hilarious.
With the kickoff moving up to the 25 with the touchback, it's 20.
Yeah, no, I do agree with you. I think it is the smarter move. I think it'll kind of... I mean, one thing that the NFL's kind of been missing in the last 10 years is we don't really have any elite returners anymore, if you think about it. Like, that used to be a thing when you used to watch football back in the day, where, like, you'd see, like, just absolutely incredible returns from, like... Oh, all of a sudden I'm forgetting names I absolutely shouldn't. Like, Jackson for the
Dante
Eagles.
Hall.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like,
not Jackson,
yeah, like, you can...
Jacoby Jones in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly, right? Where it's one of those things where it would be very cool to start to see that again because it was almost the death of the kick returner. Like your job just got destroyed because if you were good at it, you didn't get to do your job.
Yeah. And I mean, I do think this is like a couple things. I think one, I get a lot of my opinions from this from a guy, speaking of people I've talked about multiple times on the podcast, another John Boyce shout out here. There's a video called Kickoffs Are Stupid and Bad. It's been a while. It's been a while. So it's because he takes like a year to make new things. Whenever he makes something new, I'm sure I'll shout it out again. But he has a video called Kickoffs Are Stupid and Bad. It's like 10 minutes long. Watch it on YouTube if you haven't seen it. But basically his point is that the kickoff, essentially that the kickoff has been dead for a long time, where even when kickoff returns go for touchdowns, they're not very interesting, and most of the times they don't do that. And it's actually like punt returns are what's interesting. He compared he charted all of the return paths of both kick return touchdowns and punt return touchdowns. And kick return touchdowns, and normally, I see if I can like draw this out with my hand. And normally it kind of looks like, which way am I going? Am I going this way? No, I'm going this way. Yeah, there we go. Kick return touchdowns, it normally looks like this, where you just kind of like go around the defense and then boom, straight line in. Where it's just like you make one move, you find one hole in the blocking, and then you're in for a touchdown. Punt returns are where you see more of the chaos happening in terms of like, if you look up any like the famous Dante Hall return where he just like zigs back around on himself like 5 times and goes loops back into his own end zone and then finds a hole, like that's what you see in punt returns. Because there's a lot more even footing in terms of like people are still like fighting for their blocks as they go down the field. And this rule makes kickoffs more like punt returns. And I think that's awesome. Yeah. And I think you could see if that video's thesis is essentially right, which I think it is, you will see more interesting returns than you ever saw even in kickoffs before all the safety rules made them kind of obsolete.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't disagree with any of that. That's the funny thing about this one, this rule change specifically, because like I said, I don't know what the argument against it is other than tradition. Like seriously, can you? Like even just try and play devil's advocate without saying tradition. What is the one reason you keep it?
If I'm to play devil's advocate, I honestly, I think you could knock it for a couple things, which I don't agree with. But I think one is that it's kind of gimmicky.
Not the new changes. I just mean like what, or never mind. Actually, no, that makes more sense.
Like the XFL stuff. It is kind of gimmicky, and I do think it will take an adjustment period to get used to, because it does, to the football fan who is used to seeing people run out at the kickoffs, as someone who started watching the XFL, it was kind of awkward to see the ball hang up in the air, and then everybody's just standing there, and nobody's moving.
Where is it?
And it's like, okay,
it's like when you throw a tennis ball for your dog, and he's trying to figure out where it's going to land.
Yeah, pretty much. That is the thing where it's like, that part is kind of, it kind of looks awkward, but like, who cares? This is why I think it will because I do think tradition is the main argument. I think you're right with that, and I think that's why people will vote against it, because like it's the kickoff. It's been part of football since time immemorial. Like, yeah, like okay, but it's not good anymore. So I think people, because again, you need more than 8 people vote against it and it's dead. I think some people will vote against it just for tradition, but it is like the reason I'm talking about it first, or I brought it up first, is because I do think it has a pretty high likelihood of passing. Because other than tradition, like you said, I don't think there's any good argument against it.
No,
I don't know if you want to
disagree.
move into the other kicking rule. This is the one that I'm a lot more passionate about. The onside kick rule. So this makes me more. I don't have any like feelings towards the Eagles really, but this makes me like the Eagles as a franchise a lot more, because I think for 3 years they've brought up this rule proposal. It's been shot down every time. It's probably going to get shot down again because the NFL hates fun. But essentially, what it is you replace the onside kick. Um, it's an onside kick alternative is how they're framing it. So if you're down in the fourth quarter, and you're down in the fourth quarter, where you would normally want to do an onside kick, with this new rule change, what you could potentially do is go for a 4th and 20, I believe, on your own 20. And essentially, the gambit is this, right? Is you can pick up the 4th and 20, and then you get the first down and you keep going. And it's a much smarter way to determine whether a football game keeps going than an onside kick, because instead of just kicking a ball in the air and having the very anticlimactic play of someone catching it and just being down, you decide a football game on a football play. It still has very low odds. It still is very difficult to climb back into a game from down multiple scores, especially on a 4th and 20. But
What?
at least you're deciding a football game with a football play.
And I know you're not going to have the answer to this one, I don't think. But what do you think the odds are of a 4th and 20 compared to the odds of someone making an onside kick? Do you think they'd be similar?
I think it'll be easier to do this, because especially with like, again, new player safety rules. I don't think that's a bad thing though, because the onside kick, another thing we've seen in the onside kick is that the rate of which they've been recovered recently has gone down significantly.
Yeah. Well, that's because, and there's also been
like
rules
10%, and now it's like 4.
But they also made rules against certain things on onside kicks. It's the same thing as kickoffs.
Yeah, that's
where
the
they
player
made it a
safety
lot
stuff,
harder.
yeah.
Yeah. Which I think my argument, if you want to do something like a 4th and 20 rule, you have to move them back until it's the same odds. Like it would have to be like a 4th and 30 or whatever, where it becomes the same odds as kicking an onside kick now, if you're going to make a rule change like that. Or even just trying to get it back to where it was. Like if 10%, how far back would you have to move them for a 10% chance?
So this is interesting. So I do have actually the stats here.
Oh, okay.
Where last year, according to Sports Radar, last year only 5% of onside kicks in the fourth quarter were recovered. That's down from 18.8% in 2017. I've seen a 15% drop. That is what I would like. I think 4th and 20 is probably even less than a 20% chance, if I'm being quite honest. I would even be. I wouldn't be opposed to a 4th and 15. I wouldn't be opposed to a 4th and 15.
I'd say 4th and 20
or even
is good.
A 4th.
Like hearing those odds, I feel like I'm switching sides of the fence. I'd go 4th and 20.
Yep.
I actually like that number in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah. 4th and 20, like, I think it'll be interesting. I do think if it was me personally and I was being picky, I would like 4th and 15, because I do think that's a lot more manageable, a lot more, because you do want people to at least have a chance, right? Like,
sure.
4th and 20 is still a very long shot. I still like it a hell of a lot better than an onside kick, but it is still a long shot. 4th and 15 does feel manageable while not being a gimme, still being very difficult to get back into the game. The other thing that is important to note about the Eagles' proposal is that they don't allow people to abuse it, where it can only be used in very specific situations, and it can only be used up to 2 times per game. So if a team is down like 3 scores, they can't come back into the game and just never give the ball back to the other team, because there. You
At
can
what
only do it
point-
2 times. You can only do it in the fourth quarter.
How long do you think it would take if they don't have a rule like that for a team to just get really good at converting like 4th and 15s, 4th and 20s to the point where like they're risking it in like the second quarter?
I don't think so. No, because
That'd be so
what's the other
funny.
thing, too, is that it would be. But it is also from your own 20.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't like that's the other thing that's important about this is teams aren't going to just pull it out willy-nilly, because like this Eagles proposal specifically limits them from doing that, but also because nobody's going to go for a 4th and 20 from your own 20 in any other situation other than a desperation situation, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's the only time you would do it.
But it'd be funny. It would be something I would do a lot in Madden.
Yeah, that's something we should talk. Like, how does this affect Madden?
Yeah,
Like,
how does this
if you sit
affect
there with
your
people that's
Madden
in
franchise?
that would be
You heard it here
That
first,
would be
folks.
fun.
You better get some good receivers for Mutt next year. You're gonna want some jump ball guys. Better
Yeah.
hope Randy Moss is the meta again. I don't play Mutt.
Yeah, neither do I. It's not.
Yeah, no,
not
it's-
a good move.
Yeah, no, it's funny thing, I'm poor, so I'm not very good at Mutt. My wallet's not very good at Mutt.
Yeah, I played Madden Mobile back in 2017, and I'm never going back to that kind of game.
Yeah, no,
That was
I
good, though. It was a
played
good
like
first
I
one.
played like my team in NBA for a bit. That one was slightly less pay to win because you could still get good players. Like you'd get like 97. I had a whole team of like 97s, which is pretty good. And then you'd play a game against like a team with like a prime or not even like it'd be called like a Galaxy Opal Shaq, and he'd hit threes with them from like 15 feet behind the 3-point line, and I'm like, all right, you know what? I don't like you, Gabe.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's my team experience. I have not gone back since. But yeah, how will this affect my
I
Madden
just never
franchise?
wanted to pay for that. Yeah. If we want to get into like the last rule change, this one we can hit a little bit quicker. Is the hip drop tackle stuff. The proposal was that any hip drop tackles, which I don't know if like, kind of hard to explain without having the visual of it, as we were
Pulling up
finding out
something
before
right
the podcast. But it's basically like, if you look up, I believe, like Mark Andrews got injured by this last year. There's a bunch of other players who got injured by this last year. That's why it's such a big talking point. It's
There you go.
essentially where you grab a player and then you bring yourself inside and you essentially like use your body weight to bring them down.
You
and
like swing
the risk
underneath,
is-
basically.
Yeah, and the risk is of like leg injuries to that, right? Like,
Yes.
I don't remember what Mark Andrews' injury specifically was, but obviously when you're doing that, you're putting the player who has the ball, their legs in a lot of risk. I'm just pulling a lot of these like stats I'm pulling from the Score article here that I have in front of me, where they quote a league executive, Jeff Miller, says the hip drop tackle increases risk of injury by 25 times the rate of a standard tackle.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah. As
I
that
mean-
the committee views these tackles as similar to horse collar tackles that were banned in 2005.
Mm,
Which
I
that's
mean-
an interesting comparison.
I was gonna say, I mean, I get it on the injury standpoint, but I guess when you're tackling a guy like Mark Andrews, I mean, in the example we just showed, I mean, Luke Wilson, he ain't a small guy, but like, let's say you're a cornerback, right? Like, other than just like cut for the legs, like, what do you do? Like, sure, like if you're hanging on, are you just supposed to hang on for dear life now, or are you supposed to? Because in my head, when I'm thinking, if I'm grabbing Mark Andrews from behind here, right, where like I'm trying to pull him down, I'm gonna try and pull him backwards the exact same way that Luke Wilson did it. That just makes sense. Like that's just logical. When somebody's moving forward and you're trying to stop their momentum, if you try and do this, and while you're midair, guess what's gonna happen? You're gonna swing. So I honestly could see a lot of penalties coming from this because I totally could see this being a habit that a lot of NFL players just can't break, because it's just like when you're on the field and you're not thinking about it and your brain just goes, I need to get that guy onto the dirt, it's not the same as a horse collar tackle where you're just not grabbing the back of his jersey. This is a completely different thing where it's I need to remember not to swing. I need to remember not to move my body after I make that loop, right? And
Yeah.
I think I don't even know what would replace it, I guess, is kind of my argument against it. I understand the injury thing completely, but it's just I feel like a lot of those like bigger tight end type runners will be able to break a lot more tackles without a rule like this. Or a tackle like this.
Yeah, and I can get that too. I mean, the counter argument to that obviously is like people still make tackles while not doing this.
Sure.
It's not
Sure.
like this is what every tackle is. My concern, I think, would be in terms of where would it fall on the scale of horse collar tackle to roughing the passer, where horse collar tackle is something, it's a rule that was implemented, and it's like nobody has any issue with that because it's so
Yeah.
obvious to tell when the horse collar gets yanked.
And
There's
that
never really any controversy. Whereas roughing the passer is something that's so subjective and bullshit that you get like it ruins games a lot of times because the ref is too soft in terms of like this guy brushed up against a quarterback. Are we going to see like how cut and dry?
I think we will.
It is a hip drop tackle.
I think this will be a defensive version of that, actually. And that's what I was trying to say as well.
Well,
where
it's
it's
still
like,
against the defense, right? Like
Oh,
it's just
true.
another rule that goes against the defense.
Oh, true. Never
Yeah.
mind. You're totally right. Oh, wow, that's not good. I mean, yeah, no, I think that's exactly what's going to happen. Because, I mean, just like I said, just think about it logically. What would you do? If you've been doing this, it's not like a horse collar where, like, you just have to remember not to do this. As long as you don't do this, you're not horse collaring him. Right? Like,
Yeah.
it's pretty clear cut on that one. When you are mid tackle and the adrenaline's going, I'm just trying to get you to the ground. Like, I'm gonna do whatever it takes to get you to the ground. I mean, you're gonna have to be very well disciplined to not think to yourself, I could take him down if I just pull myself in. Because I think it's gonna depend on what the full definition ends up being. Because is it actually using a swing motion to try and like pull them down backwards, or is it pulling yourself closer to the runner? Because if
Yeah,
people start
I-
getting called just for like basically doing this, then we're gonna have a huge issue, I think.
Yeah. And that's what I hope doesn't happen. I hope it's pretty strict in terms of like it has to be pretty blatant for them to call it. I think I'm in the camp where it's like I would support the penalty because again, it was a huge thing, especially last year, where players were getting like seriously hurt from this, and like again, there's a reason they said it's 25 times more dangerous than a normal tackle because it is. Like that's kind of the tricky part about it. But I do think they have to be very careful in how they implement it. This can't just be something that they just say hip drop tackles are banned. That's it. I think they have to provide a very clear set of outlines in terms of what that looks like, because that's what the NFL has been very poor at in terms of roughing the passer. Because there's a very wide range of things that can be roughing the passer. Like you pointed out, I think they need to just be very specific in how they define that. Because again, like you said, if it's just this motion, like that's not.
That's
That's
gonna
not gonna
happen
be
1,000
good.
times a game. Like,
Yeah.
I think you need to start defining as well what is just a standard tackle. Like, did they ever define that when they were talking about this? Like, what is considered a
That's good
standard
question.
tackle? Because
That's a good question. I don't know if they. I'm sure they have a definition of
God,
it
of
in
course,
the rule book as is.
of course, the biggest issue in football would be not defining all this garbage. But I don't know. You'd have to figure out all of this stuff that I have a really hard time seeing exactly how they do it well. So if they do end up doing it, I'm really curious how they're gonna go about it. I guess that was a roundabout way of saying that.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean.
I think. Do you want the official NFL definition of tackling? Just like very quickly Googling the NFL rulebook. They define tackling as an attempt by a defensive player to hold a runner to a halt, his advance, or to bring him to the ground. Oh boy, that's
That's
very
not
specific.
an answer. That's
Yeah.
so. Huh. So, in that sense, you would think that with this new rule, if the tackler does try and pull themselves closer to the runner, that would be a penalty. If you just think about it like that.
Yeah, I think
Which
it'll
is
be
a
really
scary,
interesting to,
scary
like,
thought.
yeah. I think if you are in the future watching this video and they have passed this, I don't know when the competition committee is meeting. I think later this month, so probably at the end of March. If they've approved this by then, and you are a future person watching this, I would go and look at the lingo specifically in terms of what they say and how they define it, because I think that will determine how we see it being implemented. Again, I'm not against it, but I'm very cautious in terms of how they would implement it.
I just think it's interesting in the sense that I don't know how they do it at all. I guess. So I'm almost I hope they do it solely because of the fact that I'm curious. Although I do think that it would become controversial very quick. Because think about it like this.
Yeah.
Wait until a penalty, like imagine this happens on like a goal line, 4th and 1 inch. This happens.
Yeah.
And that wins the game for an offensive team. Imagine the shitstorm. Like, especially if a player doesn't get injured from it. Like, it's just, it would blow up the world, basically. And so in that sense, I don't know. I look at it right now and I don't know how they do it because it's too similar to a regular tackle. It's like I keep making that point, but I think it's a really good one to make in just the sense that comparing it to the horse collar just doesn't feel right, because when you see a horse collar now, like it's the type of thing where like you see the grab on the back of the collar, bang, and immediately go, ooh, he did that, like instantly, because it's obvious. Like you can see it from a mile away on the camera. This is not the same thing. Like this is very clearly something that you could totally just mistake for a regular tackle. And like you said, I think it's going to come down to how they define it. Because if they continue to make mistakes and just the same mistake they've made with a ton of different things where it's just they're not defining something, we're going to run into some issues. A lot of issues.
Yeah. It'll be very interesting to see how it all plays out. Like I'll be looking forward to this is what the off season gets us into. I'll be looking forward to the competition committee vote.
Oh. Guys, count the days. Guys, 8 days till the competition vote or whatever. Go nuts. I got my jersey ready. It's my referee jersey.
Oh yeah.
Dressing in stripes. Staying in the area of rule changes, we'll go from what the NFL is planning on doing to what the NHL might do, which frankly is a lot less interesting in my opinion, because a lot of these are either fairly minor or just outright not going to happen at all. And I mean, it's still an interesting conversation. I actually think we should, or no, we do have it on the top here. I think we should start with the thing that absolutely is not going to happen, in my opinion. I think Caleb, I think you pointed out the fact that it won't happen at all. They already confirmed it.
They've already said it's not going to happen.
But they were talking about some changes to the 3-on-3 overtime, which mainly being just trying to prevent players skating back with the puck and trying to restart their offense when they have it. Basically by adding a shot clock and an over and back line, which neither of them makes any sense.
Yeah,
I think the thing that I remember saying when you first brought it up to me, Caleb, was the fact that I think a shot clock would be really interesting for an all-star game. I think that'd be really cool for a game like that. But when it's regular season and like a playoff spot's on the line and it's OT, you don't want to have to worry about a shot clock. Like, that's, I don't know. I don't like it in that sense. I think it's just not very necessary. An over and back line just, I think that would be the more realistic one, but I feel like that would change just in any way. Either of these would make OT more boring, in my opinion. Yeah. Like, it would actually take away from the action.
Yeah. I think to a couple points. I think for the shot clock, because again, these are just potential ideas that people were tossing out in terms of, like, how do you fix the problem, if you even see it that way, of players retreating during overtime. specifically 3-on-3 overtime. And I think the shot clock doesn't work because it's like because it works in basketball, right? Like the shot clock is a key part of basketball. Nobody could see basketball without the shot clock now. To think that basketball existed prior to a shot clock, like absolutely insane when teams would just hold onto the ball the whole time. The thing about hockey is that it's not the same kind of game. You can't just it's
You
a
can't
lot
get
more
away with it.
free flowing.
Yeah.
It's like takeaways and giveaways happen a lot more quickly than they do in basketball, where it's like you're kind of like making your way up the ice. The puck can change hands a couple times, multiple different times before you get into the zone, right? Like there's a giveaway and then they take it right back. That happens a lot more often than in basketball, where it's normally just like one tipped pass, they get it and they go up the court.
I think, and my argument as well as to why it doesn't work the same way is the fact that in basketball, you really could, if there wasn't a shot clock, you could literally just like throw one guy here on this, like on the far side, one guy. You could play hot potato. Hockey, it is not the same thing at all. Like I just think the fact that the puck is on the ice and not in the air is immediately a difference. Just the way that defense works in hockey immediately changes that. And for you to be in a position where in hockey it's just common sense to keep the puck as far away from the net as possible. A strategy you sometimes see is ragging the puck on a power play, which is the only comparison I'd make to that. Where it's a strategy where literally, and I I will say that I have done this a few times in my hockey career, but it's where you literally take the puck into the corner and get beat up for 30 seconds and just waste down the power play. That is pretty much the closest you'll get to that. Past that, I can't imagine a world where we see like any sort of shot clock for that, because you just don't see, especially in overtime, it doesn't happen. Like, why would either team be trying to waste the clock? They both want to score.
Yeah, and it would just make it unnecessarily complicated too. As would the over and back line, if you want to talk about that too, because I do think that's more reasonable. But I think about this. I think about if you're looking at people already don't love how stringent they've gotten on offside calls, right? Where it's like these video reviews where it's just like a little bit of a skate is over the line.
Yeah.
Think about how much more of that we're gonna see with an over and back line, because it just adds another line for people to look at.
Hell, Caleb, a shot clock. Imagine someone scores like half a second after that thing goes off. Not even like 0.1.
Yeah.
Hell would rain.
I do think that would be, obviously if that happens it would be bad. I do think the
chances of that are
lower.
More
definitive.
Yeah.
The chances of that are lower, and also I think it would be a lot less definitive in terms of. Also, another thing with the shot clock, this just came to mind. If you're shooting in basketball, right, it's like you have to release the ball before the shot clock.
Yes.
But in hockey, it's like, let's say you have a shot from the point, and that shot gets released before the shot clock, but then it gets tipped in.
Oh.
Does that still count?
I would make the argument. I think what they do with that is the same rule they have for just regular, like any type of regular goal in the NHL, where it has to cross the line before the buzzer goes off. I think that's probably what they do. So it wouldn't have anything to do with the release.
That would be really difficult, though, in terms of
absolutely
having to time up your shot.
It's not the same as basketball, though, where like you put a shot in the air at like it takes like 2 seconds or maybe like a second and a half to get to the basket. Like that puck's moving like 100 kilometers miles an hour or whatever. Like it's still a lot quicker.
Between.
Oh, maybe half a second.
Still, I guess it is a very niche situation.
Yeah.
But it is something that could come up, and that would make all hell break loose. I think it was. I can pull up the score article I had, but again,
I also think
it would bring. Not going to do this.
It would bring into the question of like what counts as a shot as well.
Yeah, which I don't know if that's another. I don't know if that's anything we want. Like.
I don't know.
If the NHL wants to get into.
Which, I mean, they kind of like if what happens if they have 2 seconds on the clock or something, right? Like a team has 2 seconds on the clock, and they take a shot, and they miss the net, and it hits the boards behind it. Does the team just get to pick it up in that scenario, or is it like an air ball where it's like whistled down and you get a face off? Like what happens in that scenario? Like how do you enforce
As
it?
if it is. That completely kills pacing too, right?
Yeah.
Like a
Like,
shot
how-
clock violation. How does
Or
that happen?
or
That
is it
kills the
like
pace
is
of
it
the
like
game.
minor or like junior hockey or whatever, like Timbits, where they just place the puck behind the team's goal and let the defenseman take it up? Like that's the one thing about NHL hockey is the fact that they don't have any like in other sports, you can give the ball to the other team if a penalty or something happens. The only thing we kind of have for that is putting the face off in the offensive zone. We don't have a play that automatically gives a certain team possession. That's not how it works. And in other sports, that is a thing. But I think if you were to introduce rules like this, where like a shot clock, for example, or some sort of like enforcing of this, you would have to introduce that type of thing, which I think opens a whole other can of worms on what other penalties and plays would you just give a certain team. Like if a ref makes a mistake, right, on an offside and it's a clear mistake, which sometimes happens, right? Are you going to give, instead of giving the other team a face off on the spot, are you just going to give them the puck behind their own net? Or whatever the hell it ends up being. Like, it's...
Which
I don't know.
doesn't matter as much as it does in other sports.
No, and I agree with you. I don't think it does. But I just think in this scenario, if it's a face-off that ends up being what comes from it, that's not enough. Like, the team that forced the shot clock violation should get the puck 100% of the time.
Yeah. And if we want to wrap up the overtime stuff, I think there's a quote from the Stars general manager, Jim Nill, that I think like sums it up pretty well. Where he's like, basically saying like, this is just going to make everything too complicated if we do this. So like all of a sudden, now I've got the puck at center ice and you come and poke it. Did it go over the line? Did it not go over the line? It's talking about over and back line.
Yeah.
Do we have a video replay on that? It just opens up a can of worms.
It's true.
I said, or we're going to have another clock. It's not worth it.
Would defensive teams just be trying to almost ice it to try and force it over and back? Would the play be to basically defend your blue line instead of defending your goal? Like, at what point does the neutral zone would become basically a kill zone for like any sort of offensive play? Like, I agree with that.
It's an interesting idea, but there's a reason it's not happening because you can sit here like we do and just poke a billion holes in it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we can, like you said, we can move into some other ones. Why don't we move into probably what is the other more interesting one that people are talking about, which is the addition of more challenges, which there's a couple on this list. We can talk about the main ones, maybe a couple other ones, we'll see. But the main ones are related to a puck being shot over the glass in the defensive zone, which normally, if it is the defensive player that did it, means that player is going to the box for a delay of game. But now they're saying that coaches can challenge that to try and see if basically whether or not it got deflected or not, or if there was something or other. I think with this one I agree with it. I find it weird that wasn't a thing already. Like, I honestly would have assumed it was.
Honestly.
Yeah, that's something that I would have thought was already a thing. So it's kind of, I'd almost like, I like that a lot, considering the fact that it clearly wasn't. It makes sense. It's the same thing with the high sticking thing, where it's basically you can now try and see if whether they in the Sportsnet article they call it friendly fire, which I think is really funny, but whether or not basically the stick hitting someone in the face was their teammates, which is because it could happen.
Before.
Oh, absolutely, it's definitely happened before.
I've seen it happen before.
Oh yeah, I've hit plenty of my teammates in the face with my stick. Like, it happens all the time. Like, I mean, I like both of these. I don't actually even think there's much to talk about more than the fact that it makes sense. I don't know why they wouldn't go through. The only argument against it is just the fact that I know a lot of people don't like challenges just in the fact that they're kind of
slows the game down.
Yeah. I mean, it becomes the same thing as Yeah, I mean, it's exactly that. It slows things down. But I guess my argument is the fact that the NHL does have something to kind of discourage it unless it's obvious.
Counteract it.
Yeah, like they do take away a timeout, which, oh no, in the NHL
Well-
that's nowhere as big as it is in like football or basketball, for example.
But you also
like,
get a delay of game penalty.
do you? Do you know?
Yes.
Oh, I'm dumb.
If you
Never
lose
mind.
if you lose a coach's challenge in the NHL,
Oh, I forgot
um,
that.
then
Well,
then you're
even
going
more
to
than.
so the interesting thing about these ones in terms of like delay or game or high sticking. So let's say team A shoots it out in their own zone. They get called a delay of game. They want to review it to see whether it hit someone else's like the other team's stick or deflected off something else before it went out. And let's say they're wrong. They are going to like this is why I think it's like I love the addition of these. It's because no team is going to do it unless it's completely obvious. Because let's say if they're wrong, now it's a 5-on-3. Because they get two delay of games, one for initiating the challenge and one for
That's
the
true.
puck.
That's very true.
It's the same thing for high sticking. So let's say this. Let's say someone gets a double minor high sticking. And then the team that got the double minor is like, no, this is his own player. And they watch the replay and it turns out, no, they're wrong. It was indeed a double minor. Now, not only you have a double minor, but now you have a 5-on-3 for half of that double minor.
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually. I wasn't looking at it like that. But yeah, no, I already was on board with this. I think it's a smart move. I think the idea that it would be slowing down the game only makes sense if you're living in a world kind of like the NFL where you're not really losing as much if you don't get the challenge. I think you just lose a timeout in the NFL. I think that's why I got confused on that one, right?
You do, but in the NFL, the other thing they do to counteract it, I don't know if this is the same in the NHL. I'd have to look this up. But you can only do it a certain amount of times. And if you like miss your first one, then you're out.
I think
I might-
that
I
is
might-
the case in the.
I might
Oh
have to
yeah,
look
you
back.
get one. You get one challenge in the NHL.
I might have to be fact check on that in both NFL and NHL. But basically,
No,
the system is if you miss a certain
NFL
amount, you can't.
NFL, I'm not sure either, but NHL, that is right. Yeah, you only get one,
Yeah,
and you obviously
So,
get it back
I'll-
if you're right.
yeah. For all the people who are like, "Oh my God, it's slowing the game down," like come on.
It's
It's not.
kind of not because it would have anyway. Like, I don't know. It's kind of just a quality of life thing, honestly.
Yeah.
Like challenges
Because
were
what would
already
you
a thing.
rather have? Yeah, what would you rather have? Like the ability to not challenge something and then have a egregiously wrong call, not be able to like again. I think back to the NFL on this. I think the Saints Rams NFC Championship game where there was obvious pass interference on the Rams and it didn't get called, but it couldn't be reviewed, so the Rams went to the Super Bowl instead of the Saints. Right? Like stuff like that happens in sports, and having challenges essentially just gives you a safety net because the referees are gonna fuck up, right? They're human, they're gonna fuck up.
Yeah.
It gives you essentially a safety net to be able to look at the replay. Stopping yourself from being able to look at a review, I think it's just plain stupid. And so adding additional challenges to anything in any sport, frankly, I'm all for.
I've
As long as
already
you have those limits on it.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've already thought for a while that in the NHL, I honestly think that every penalty should be reviewed. Even if
I
it's
agree.
just like, I think that not in the sense that they do it now with challenges. I think that they should just have a bunch of people in rooms with TV screens, basically confirming or basically declining
Yeah.
penalties. I think that should be a thing. I actually think it's
And
pretty
it's like-
ridiculous that it isn't.
And not to bring it too much back to the NFL again, but they do that in the NFL, right? Every single touchdown is reviewed.
Yes,
And-
yes. I just mean that
and
like
it's a very short process where like
Yes.
it doesn't take unless it's something
The
that's already
fact-
kind of controversial. It gets held up in like a second.
And it
doesn't slow
also,
down at all.
I will say, yes, that's true as well. I also just think it kind of like, it holds, like you pointed out, officials accountable, which I think is a big thing. I think the one nitpick in that is just the fact that, and anybody, this is something that I don't even know if it's a bad thing if it goes, but one thing that many officials do, and it's a very known practice, is kind of like, what's the term?
Like a makeup call?
Yeah. Like what would that do to makeup calls, for example, where you miss something and just like the ref goes, "Ooh, I should have called that." Do you like just like and then you pull someone else basically like on something light? Like that would almost kind of get
Well,
destroyed, which I don't know if that's necessarily that
that's
bad
not
of a
bad
thing. Yeah, like
Because
it's
then the other thing that would happen is that like if you're I guess it's kind of it's harder, especially in hockey on a no call.
yes.
Like you'd probably end up catching a lot more of those if you make more things challengeable. It's harder in hockey than it is in football.
I'd argue no. Because I think
Yeah,
I think when you're not on the ice you
logistically,
don't
it's
see
hard.
as much. Like
Logistically, it's hard.
especially from like a replay booth, you'd have to have a camera on every corner. If you're just watching the game like anyone else, there's a lot of stuff you'd miss. Like you're
Yeah.
only seeing like if the ice is this big, right? One second, I'm framing up. You're only seeing this much with the camera. Like it makes sense
No,
on when you're just
well,
double checking what. It doesn't fix missed
They have
calls.
more cameras in the situation room kind of thing, though. Like it wouldn't be. I don't think
I
that would
guess.
be an issue.
I guess. Yeah, that's true. I guess you could literally. I mean, just think about how many cameras they have set up at a game. Probably like, I don't know, a lot. Probably close to 10. Like 9, 10 would be my ballpark for that type of thing. Like,
Yeah.
I think. I mean, you could literally just like feed all those to different monitors, which would be a massive pain in the ass. I've seen kind of what that looks like in a sense, and it is a massive pain in the ass, but it can be done. Like there is
The
a
NHL, man, they got money. They can
yeah, I
figure
was
it
gonna
out.
say, and also just the fact that like they already do that in like the control room. All of those cameras go back
Yeah.
to a giant monitor, like that already happens. It's just duplicating that, which I don't think it'd be fun to do. I would not want to do it, but I mean, it's absolutely something that
Certainly,
can
it's
be done.
impossible.
No, no, it's not.
Yeah.
I think I don't know. I don't know enough about that behind the scenes stuff to really give you a definitive answer on how you do it. But like, it's definitely doable.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. We can. I forgot that I was the one running this. Goalies can now get penalized for dislodging the net. I was like, I'm just here. Anyway, goalies can now be penalized for dislodging the net, aka the Hank rule. Which I mean, this is one that I again am very surprised was not already a rule, because this is something that we saw. There is one very famous clip of, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, Hank, Henrik Lundqvist, he got hurt on the previous play. The refs didn't blow it down because, I mean, he was still standing up. He still had all of his equipment, and he didn't get a concussion. So they were kind of just like, and it was also like 2013, so they were just letting it play. And he gets very mad. All of a sudden it's a 2-on-1 coming back on him. He turns around and just goes, just tosses the net. And I mean, brilliant play. I thought it was very smart. Because I mean, I'm kind of there's a conversation to be had about like whether or not it's smart to dislodge your net in a situation like that. Because I mean, let's say it's a 3-on-1 or 3-on-0 even. Just gonna push that net off. I'll take the penalty. Right? Like and that's a thought I've had in the past as well. I think now that this is officially a rule that goalies will be penalized for dislodging the net purposely. I think the key thing is purposely. Then I think I think that now we're gonna finally see an end to any sort of like I don't even know what to call it. Like big brain penalty taken. If you somehow like in overtime, for example, we've seen it before where like it's a 3-on-0. Like, would you be that dumb if you're a goalie to just go like knock off the nets? I don't think you would be. I think that'd be pretty smart actually.
Yeah. Something that I think would be interesting is so this happened recently. I didn't know that this was a rule. So obviously dislodging the net as a player has been a penalty, right? You can't go and dislodge the net as a skater. But what I didn't know, and I think this would be interesting in terms of how it plays out with the goalie thing, where you talked about like if you're facing a 2-on-1, like what would you rather have? But this is where I think it complicates things. Is this happened earlier this month? So it was the Devils versus the Ducks, and Frank Vetrano intentionally dislodged the net, while the Devils were trying to tie the game in the last 2 minutes, and they blew the play dead, called him a penalty, but it was a penalty shot because it was in the last 2 minutes, which is a rule that I didn't know existed.
So
Basically, if it's in the last 2 minutes, it's a penalty shot. I wonder if that carries over to goalies. Is my point.
I think
wonder if
it
they're carrying
does.
that over.
I think you're onto something there, because I agree with you. I think it does. But I bring back my point of, would you rather, as a goalie in overtime, have 3 players with all your defense, like it's the Vancouver scenario we saw a couple years back, where they literally had 10 seconds before another, like I think it was the Islanders defenseman was anywhere near them. Like, do you remember that play at all? Like,
No,
where it was
but
just
I
like
can
you
picture
can picture it in your head, where like they had an endless amount of time in the offensive zone before being even slightly challenged. And I think if I'm a goalie and I see 3 players coming back, I'm thinking to myself, that penalty shot's looking pretty good right now. Right? Like, especially
only one guy.
Exactly, right? It's the math. I mean, I actually think if it is a penalty shot, I understand dislodging the net in that scenario even more. I mean, I'll take one guy coming down the ice towards me over 3. Like, shocker on that one. I mean, I don't know. I guess another thing becomes like, I think another thing that would definitely make it a lot harder to take that penalty shot chance is if the other team gets to choose who takes the penalty shot, which I think should probably be a thing. Because if it's like the 4th line is out there, 3 guys coming down, and you know that you're going to be getting a shot taken on you by like Ryan Reeves, I'm not worried about it. But if you know that the whole 4th line is coming down at you, right? It's a bunch of guys, not necessarily anyone big, but you're thinking, if I take this penalty shot instead, it's going to be Connor McDavid 1-0. Like, that's a lot scarier, right? I think that makes more sense.
I don't know
Yeah.
whether they get to choose or not. In this Ducks Devils example,
don't think
Jack
so.
Hughes took the penalty shot.
Oh, so maybe they do. Yeah, maybe they do.
So
then.
maybe they do. I don't know.
Jack
like,
Hughes is
I
who
don't- I
I'd
don't
pick
know,
too.
like-
So
Like, if they were to choose, they probably would have. I don't know if like Jack Hughes was.
That
in
could
the
have been
spot
a
to
cir-
score on this play.
that could have been a circumstance thing, I guess.
He's near the net. I don't. I
Maybe
wouldn't say
you know
he's
what they could
necessarily
say.
the-
You know what it might be? Maybe they get to choose anyone who's on the ice, because I've seen that before.
That could be it. Yeah.
I'd believe
Which
that.
in an end of game scenario, it's not going to be your 4th liners.
That's true. It could be like second liners, like at worst. Like that'd be like
Yeah.
the Backlands of the world.
Yeah. At that point, are the goalies in the split second really doing that kind of calculus, though? Like, that's the
Yes.
thing, too.
Absolutely. If you know any goalies, they absolutely are.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
There's a
yeah.
reason Lundqvist pushed
Right,
off that
that's
net.
It's true, I don't know. It's true. I don't know. I don't know.
I
how
fully
goalies that
believe
well.
I fully believe that, like, in a situation like that, I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often, honestly.
Okay. Well, it's an interesting rule. Then it's got a little more to it.
It could also just be like a respect thing, where it's the type of thing where you just don't. I honestly think that's mainly the reason it doesn't happen, because there is a bunch of stuff like that in hockey. For example, the Michigan.
The code.
Yeah, it's the code, exactly.
Yeah.
The Michigan's the big one to me, where it's like, sure, I mean, we've seen a couple players be super effective with it, but, I mean, if you can, it's the type of thing where, like, if you show the other team that I know how to lift my stick like this, they're going to show you that they know how to lift their stick like this. Like, that's how it works. Like, I can tell you in the very... Usually the bench does not react fondly to anybody trying that. And I think it'd be the same thing. I think you'd see the goalie getting snowed a lot. It would just result in a ton of fights. But, yeah.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it makes...
You want to...
Yeah, we can move on. We're taking a while.
talk about
with
the
this
last... I feel like the last interesting one is the one you brought up before the pod.
It just in like
In terms of the legs. The legs one.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we can talk about that one. So they will now be giving out, or with this change. Oh no, this is
confirmed.
immediate. Yeah, this one's confirmed. You're right.
This is immediate.
So
This
yeah,
is the
no,
only one
it took me a
that's
second to
confirmed.
realize that. Yeah, so this one is confirmed that players will now get a warning and then a penalty for hanging their legs over the bench during the play, which kind of makes sense if you're looking at it just from like somebody who I don't know. I'm trying to figure out the best way to explain this. In my experience, it is a lot harder to jump over the bench fully straight up, which I don't know if that's quite what they're. How long would they have to hang their leg over the bench during a play for them to get a warning?
Probably a decent amount of time.
Okay,
right?
because yeah,
They're not
if
gonna-
because in my head, I'm imagining if you don't state that, if you don't state a time limit, which I think they should, I think they should say you cannot have your bench over the boards without jumping over for more than like 2 seconds, is what they should say. 2-3 seconds. Because then I have no issue with it, actually. I actually think that's a smart move. But
Yeah.
I just think if you're fully expecting players to throw both of their legs over when a player's coming like full speed, somebody's gonna get hurt, I think. I mean, they're pros, so maybe they're clearly not me. They've been doing it. They're definitely a lot better at it. But I can tell you that it's a lot less fun to throw both your legs over the boards at once. I mean, it's I don't know. I could see yeah. We'll see. We'll see what it ends up being.
As someone who's not a hockey player and has never played hockey at any level, I
Yeah.
can't empathize with it as much in terms of
I'm just
how
bad.
difficult
I was
football
gonna
is to make.
say I feel like the instant response that we'll get in the comments for that one is just like you're just bad at it then. And I was like, yeah, that's fair. I am just bad at it, but like
Yeah.
it's the type of thing where it's
heat
the
in
thought that
comments
comes
gonna be
it
coming
is
for you.
oh yeah. It's the thought that comes to my own head where it's just like it's not a safety thing because you just land on the ice and pop back up, but it's just it's again, quality of life was a word I used earlier where it's just I mean, it's just a thing that people do, and it feels weird they'll be getting penalties for it now, even if, like, the thing we didn't mention either. I don't think either of us brought it up was the
No.
why they're making
Yeah,
this change,
I was gonna
which is
say.
the fact that an injury happened, I think last year or this year, with an official basically getting, I think you said cut, right?
Cut.
Like
Yeah.
cut by a skate, and obviously you don't want that. You want to avoid that as much as possible, which is why they made this move at all. So in that sense, it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I don't know. That's where my head goes when I look at it. It's just I feel like you really have to get specific with this kind of rule, and you have to state exactly how long a player has to hang their legs on the board as the term of you using it. Because I need to know how long I can do it for. Like, let's say, for example, because what I'm thinking in my own head again is let's say a player starts skating towards the boards and is clearly, you make eye contact, you know they're changing. And then all of a sudden, turn over and they have to skate back. And my leg's already over the boards at this
Yeah.
point, right? Am I being forced to, like, do I have to immediately go shit and just like pull it back over? Or am I going to get a warning for something like that, right? Like it almost adds on to like
it was. I do think another important thing to say is that I think it is a warning at first,
yes.
right?
Yes, that is what I'm
It's-
saying though. Like it's at what point like how is this going to work? I guess. I need more details, I guess, is what I'm saying. I'm
Yeah.
curious how they're going to do it. I've said that with a couple of these rules, which I'm sure they will make it a bit more specific. But with this one
Yeah.
specifically, I think you really do have to give a specific number or something like that. I mean, it's almost like imagine what it would be like to call a high sticking penalty if they didn't specify that the stick couldn't go above like the
Yeah.
the net or the crossbar or whatever. Like imagine if it's kind of like that in
You need
to
a
me.
parameter,
Yeah.
or else you just end up being like the catch rules in the NFL, where nobody
Yes,
knows what a catch is.
exactly. And the NHL does not have that issue that the NFL has, which is just sucking at making rules. But so I'm not that worried about it. I just think that it absolutely has to be a thing. Because I mean, it's
Yeah.
not a rule that anyone can abuse in any way, but it's just I don't know. If a team gets a penalty for something as stupid as that, it'll piss a lot of people off.
Yeah.
for
People
one.
are gonna be mad.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I
The good
almost
thing, I'm at least glad they did the warning system. Because
yes. Yes.
if
If
they
there was
didn't
no
have that,
warning, holy.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
We'll see how strict they are on it. Because this
yes.
is something that we'll see immediately
I also
in this season.
yeah. No, I agree with that too. Like, is this in any play or is it just in plays near the boards? Is another question I guess I have.
I think in any play, so that
Which
the
is
Elliot
even
Friedman
more interesting.
tweet is
yeah.
just,
During
just
play.
straight up says
During play. is the
players will
term
not
used.
be able to have legs over the bench, or / in play while not on ice. Warning, then bench minor if repeated.
So yeah, we'll see how it ends up working. I'm sure they'll go into
Yeah.
more specifics once once we actually see it happen, which we will at some point. Like I think we'll get a pretty good idea of how this is going to work. But until then, it's kind of hard to assess because it'll either not matter at all or it'll matter a lot. So yeah, we'll see. Staying in the NHL side of things for a bit longer, we'll be talking about a comment that Kyle Dubas made. Dubas. He made a comment about what the Pens' plans are heading into the next couple seasons of their franchise player's career in Sidney Crosby, just in the fact that, I mean, that has been the question the last couple of years, I think, looking at this Penguins team. What direction are they heading in? The one thing that I think most people have thought, including myself, is the fact that they very clearly aren't trying to tank, just in the fact that they have kept most of their franchise players. Malkin's still there, Letang's still there, Crosby's still there, obviously. They've kept all of those big names, and so far, it's been fairly clear that they've been trying to contend. Have they been doing it well? Not at all. They have not won a playoff series since their cup run in 2018, and it shows. They have not had basically any showings. I think they've popped in the playoffs maybe once or twice off memory, but they haven't really done anything in those few runs that they've tried to made exactly there in the fact that they haven't won a series. And I think that exactly is why it was a little shocking to people. I mean, he's kind of saying the obvious, but Dubas came out and said that the Penguins intend to contend. That's a very good headline. Intend to contend in Crosby's final years. And, I mean, Caleb, I think I know what your opinion on this is. I think we've kind of talked about it before with the Erik Karlsson, when the whole Erik Karlsson thing happened a while back. I have kind of shifted my opinion since we've had that conversation as well. So I'll just throw it over to you to do your Penguins, yell at the Penguins.
This is why people should listen to me sometimes, because I mean, like, I saw this coming.
Yeah.
I can't exactly proclaim myself a savant for this one though, because it's not like it was unpredictable.
Yeah.
It was a terrible decision in the first place.
It was either going to work out really well or not at all, and I think even I remember saying that, like, because it's the type of move where, frankly, like, there was no middle ground. Either you were going to the cup or you were doing nothing with the new defenseman you have for
but they're
$11
not going to
million.
go to the cup. But they're not going to go to the cup because
Yeah,
they
but
don't have
that's-
a cup-winning team anymore.
But that's the thing. They
Even
don't
with Erik
understand
Karlsson.
that, Caleb. They aren't trading for.
Yeah,
They're trading for Erik Karlsson because they think they're going to the cup.
Yes. You know what it is? It's not intending to contend. It's pretending to contend.
There you go. That's a
Like,
good way to put it.
There we go.
There we go. Ooh, pull it out our own headlines.
I know how to whip a headline.
Oh yeah.
But like, no, it's because, I mean, I think I've made the comparison to this whenever we've talked about this before, but it's the same thing with the Red Wings that happened when they had like their 25-year streak of going to the playoffs, and they kept that dying team alive for way longer than they should have because they wanted to keep that streak alive, and they kept that streak alive, but there's a reason they now have a huge playoff drought. Because things like that have consequences. If you don't get value for your pieces, there's consequences. And when you try to keep alive an aging roster, the Penguins are old. And obviously getting Erik Karlsson, who isn't a spring chicken himself, like that has consequences. I don't know. It's just not smart. I do think Dubas is a great general manager, and I mean, it's not. Did he make the Carl? Was he there when the Carlson signing
Yes,
happened?
he was the one who made that trade.
Did he
Because
make the Carlson signing?
the thing that made
That's
that
still-
so interesting as well was the fact that I believe he was trying to make that move when he was in Toronto as well, where which
would have made more
basically
sense for Toronto. That would have made sense for Toronto.
with their cap, I don't know about that, but it still
Okay,
would have been
fair.
it still would have been a little, and especially who they have to sign in the next couple of years. I would argue that it
Team-
would have made
team
less
fit
sense for
wise?
Toronto, but
Money wise, team fit wise, it would make sense.
sure, if money doesn't exist, then sure, but like
Yeah, obviously, it's a fair point to cap. You have to do some like cap magic,
which is why I think it didn't happen as well. I think it's something to point
Yeah,
out because
which
I
makes
think
sense. Which
I
makes
think
sense.
if in a world where cap doesn't exist, which I already think is the world Dubas lives in with the contracts he signed half those Leafs players to, but I mean it's that's what I mean by the fact that I like the point you made. It's pretending to contend. That's exactly what it is because you have to really think. They thought that they were going to have a cup run there with Crosby, Carlson, Malkin, Letang, all that. They thought they had a cup run.
and they're not even close.
They're not, which is kind of it's
They are
it's
currently second last in their division,
yeah.
59 points. Like they're not anywhere close.
And I mean, even just looking at like you gotta wonder like he's coming out and saying this comment. I don't want to like. If I'm Crosby, do I really want to stay? I'm just gonna come out right and say
Yeah.
it. Like, do I really want to stay at this point? I don't think I
Well,
would.
I
Like, 'cause think about it like
I
this.
assume that's why he's saying this, right?
Yeah,
Because Crosby, because I mean, this whole conversation is coming off of the end of the Gensel trade, right? And Crosby, like, who's normally not an outspoken guy, right? Like, he's
No.
classic Canadian hockey player. He's not going to speak his mind, but he came out and said, like, I don't know what the hell we're doing, basically.
Yeah.
Like, he was.
That's a
upset
question
about
for the
Gensel move,
management.
obviously. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
yes, that's exactly what he said. And it's like, so you can see he's upset, and so the reason Dubas is saying something like this is
to keep your star
try to
happy.
keep Crosby.
Yeah.
And it's like, but it's not going to happen because how many years does Crosby have left? This Penguins rebuild is going to take like probably 5 years to get back to the level that they have been, right?
Yeah, no, I don't think that they're gonna be doing much. It's kind of
Crosby's
like,
36.
and it's crazy. It's crazy to think about it, but you know what's the comparison I'd make to what the Penguins are currently sitting in? It's kind of like what we saw the late 2000s Flames look like with Iginla, where guys, we got Yossi Jokinen. We're going to the cup. Like it was that type of thing,
Olli
right?
Jokinen, yeah, I remember.
Or no, wrong Jokinen, whatever. Like it's just like like it's that type of thing. And sure,
I was an Olli Jokinen stan as a kid.
oh yeah.
He was my favorite player for a little bit.
Oh
there.
really?
I wanted
That's
to
an
be
odd.
different.
Okay, yeah, fair
I
enough.
wanted to be different.
Oh,
I
that's
was like
fair.
7. Don't.
To be fair, I had that phase later on when one of my favorite players was Sam Bennett. I was a Sam Bennett defender.
Oh, that's fair. I still have a Sam Bennett autographed hat. Like he's
Same.
still one of my faves.
Oh yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
really? Really? That's funny.
No, I got to meet Sam Bennett when in like his rookie year. I remember. Yeah, but
Yeah, I didn't meet him. I just got it I wanted. My dad won a prize pool, and as
Oh,
an
okay.
Oilers fan, did
Yeah.
not want it.
didn't
but-
even get to meet him. Wow, not even a real
I know,
Flames fan.
I know, second class. But talk about the Flames. I do think it's a good comparison to make in terms of like literally the Flames of now.
Yes.
Why are the Flames?
Not true.
because they're living like we're together too long.
I'd
David
argue the
Ortiz
Flames have
control.
less reason to do what they're doing now.
Well, no, but I think what Craig Conroy is doing is the absolute opposite of what Dubas is doing, or at least Dubas is saying he's doing.
Yeah.
Where like Conroy is trying to get value for people, and
Yeah.
it's upsetting some people, right? Like you don't want to trade.
I
like,
would argue that a lot of the issues with how the Flames are doing it this season probably is more related to coaching than Craig Conroy in the general manager room, because it's more related to stuff with veterans getting more opportunities than, for example, the whole Dustin Wolf thing. Like, I think that's more a coaching choice, just in the fact that no coach in the NHL is ever going to actively put someone on the ice who will give them a less chance to win than a veteran in almost any situation.
Yeah.
Even if they're tanking or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I think it's more so in terms of like. Yeah, I do think that's part of it, but I do think the Flames are doing it right now.
Yes.
Like, I like
No, I
what
agree.
they're doing this season because they're selling off pieces, and Dubas made, I think, the right move in selling off Gensel. Like,
yes,
I think
yeah,
that was the
for
right
sure.
move.
It's almost like they're taking a step
but
back.
he's-
Like he got a bit gun shy.
He's backtracking on it. But I think I agree with what you say, where I don't think that's anything more than just trying to appease your star. Right?
Yeah, I don't think it's true. I think that unless we see some like real moves that actually kind of confirm it, I see no reason to believe a single word of it. I still think that the Pens are moving towards having a way worse team next year. I don't know what would
They're
make
gonna
them
have a
better.
worse team every year after this.
Yeah, which is
Crosby's
exactly
gonna
why
Crosby's going to start to decline. Malkin's going to start to decline.
exactly why
Crosby's
I just don't
36
see why
and
Crosby
Malkin's
sticks
37.
around. Like, what is in Pittsburgh for him at this point? Like, especially looking at it like this, the only reason Malkin and Letang are still on these rosters are because of Crosby. Like, as good as they are. That makes it sound like they're not deserving of it. I'm just saying that the only reason they've stuck around is that for on the same team for that long is because of that, right? You gotta wonder if I think what if I'm Dubas, and this is assuming he's not dumb and doesn't actually think he can contend. My next move is probably to offload either, I would say probably Letang. Letang is probably the guy I try and move next. I think he's the most movable, just because his contract still isn't small, but it is definitely smaller than Malkin's, and I think it's also shorter, if I remember right. So I think in both of those senses, I think he is the easier player to move. So, but even looking at it like that, you are going to piss Crosby off if you move Letang. Like, and at a certain point where it's just like, all my friends are gone, why the hell am I supposed to stay? Right? Like, I mean, it's
Letang is signed until he's 41.
is he?
Yeah, he's in the second year. He's in the
What's
second
Malkin?
year of his
What's
6-year
Malkin locked
deal.
down on?
That's a great question. Give me a second to find that. I think.
Yeah, because
I think the one.
am I
the one
just
thing
way
in
off?
terms of like. Let me see. So let me. The
I
one
know
thing about
Malkin
Letang's
makes.
deal is
I
it
know
gets
he makes more.
Letang's deal gets significantly cheaper the longer you go into it.
Okay, so that's
Um,
less of a big deal, I guess. Still a big deal.
Malkin
41 is
signed
old, but
Malkin is signed until he's 40, and is more expensive marginally. He's not more expensive now. Letang is more expensive now.
so yeah,
Wow.
Malkin's around until 2026 on whatever deal. So it's another 2 years, 3 years, 2 years.
You know, 2 more years with the Pens, and then in the third year it'll be a UFA.
Yeah, that's right. Like
Yeah, Letang actually has a higher cap hit for the next couple of years. That's interesting.
oh, I was just
and then
off
Crosby.
on all regards. Okay, like,
Yeah.
that's pretty interesting. Yeah.
I think in terms of to go to your point in terms of why would Crosby want to stay there, I almost wonder if it's just the kind of thing
It's
where
a
he's been with
legacy
him for
thing.
so long where he just wants to that
Retire
would
a
be my
Pen.
guess.
I think that's
It
the
would
only
be-
reason
it
they're
would be
doing this.
so- It would be very strange to me to see him in another uniform.
It's the only reason Ovechkin's not on a different team, for example. It's a legacy thing. Washington
Yeah.
would look bad trading. I mean, even think about what the Flames look like after that Iginla trade. Like, they did not come out looking better or more positive or whatever. And I just realized that I've had it on that this whole time, which means that everybody's just been staring at that screen, which is fun. Going to be just terrific for editing. I hope that hasn't been on for too long. I'm sorry about that. But whatever.
Yeah. I think one last thing that is interesting, just pulling up all the contract numbers. This is kind of not related, but so Crosby, right, like signed this big 12-year deal, right?
Yeah.
Like 8.7 million per
Oh, yeah.
year, 87, 87, huh? Look at him go. But he doesn't have much time left on that deal.
Nope.
There's run out because he signed it when he was 26, and he's a UFA when he's 38. It's insane that he's
I know. Right?
under contract for that long.
Send
And
the
he's
kid,
got
huh?
one more. Yeah, exactly. He's got this season, then one more, and then he's a UFA. What do they do that? That's interesting to me.
Yeah. Does Sid the Kid come back to Pittsburgh? Probably not.
Oh, boy.
I guess it depends on how good he is at that
Or does
point.
he-
Which the answer to that question is he's good. So he's gonna be good till he's like 40.
Yeah.
I think Crosby's still and he'll get worse, but I still think he'd be at least like a 60. He'd be better than 90% of the league still.
Yeah, I mean he still is.
No, I mean in
he's
2
almost
years.
37.
I still think that he'd be better.
Yeah.
It's the unless he retires ahead of the game, which I mean is fairly common with a player like that. But
Yeah, and I don't even know, like, he's around the age where he could be retiring, right? Like, I know.
maybe a year or two.
Yeah, well, because he's reaching 40, right?
I could see him retiring after his contract runs out. Maybe.
Yeah, I could.
If
see
if he outright, I could see him just deciding that nothing else is going to happen in Pittsburgh, and he doesn't want to play somewhere else. I could see that being a real possibility.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't want
think
to
in my head
uproot everything he's built in Pittsburgh just because he wants
Yeah.
another cup when he has 3. Whatever.
Yeah, I would have a hard time seeing him do that. I would be pretty surprised.
Yeah, no, it definitely would be fairly shocking. It's gonna be kind of whack to see what Pittsburgh ends up doing in the next couple of years because I think they're just gonna continue heading down the wrong
They're
path,
screwed.
and they're eventually gonna look like what all of list any bad team ever. They're the next Coyotes. Like it's just they're gonna be bad for a long time whenever the back end of this ends up coming around.
Yeah. Savor your pseudo playoff push now. Pseudo playoff push.
Pseudo.
Because you're not getting in. Savor your pseudo playoff push now, Pens fans, because you're not going to get this close again for a long time, I think.
But Caleb, they got Michael Bunting.
Oh boy.
You don't
Raise the banner.
understand. You don't. You don't understand. You don't understand how insane their playoff push is about to be.
Raise the fucking banner.
It's already in house.
So, a common topic of conversation in NHL circles for the past 5 years has been the Coyotes, and obviously for a ton of reasons. Because one, if you just look at where they're playing right now, they've never been a good hockey market, and it's been part of this grand experiment that Gary Bettman's had that, I mean, has worked in some places. You see hockey working in places like Vegas, places like, obviously with the success they've had, like Tampa Bay. There's been lots of great successes in terms of hockey in the South where it's not necessarily traditional hockey markets. Then there's places like the Coyotes.
I want to immediately come out and say something though to explain the difference, because I think the biggest reason the Coyotes have failed is whenever you look at those expansion teams that went to somewhere where you think that's not a hockey market, the reason it's worked is usually because they had success early. If you look at it across the board.
And the Coyotes haven't had
The
that.
Coyotes haven't had anything. The only thing that you could possibly even think of would be them getting
They had a
Gretzky as their coach.
finals run.
Yeah, but that was
No,
later.
they had a conference final.
That was
run.
later. That was a
Yeah,
lot
that was
later.
That was later.
I'm talking
That's
about
true.
early on, what put them on the map. What would have filled the seats?
Yeah.
Gretzky on the bench. That is the only thing they did in the first 10 years of their existence. Name one other Coyotes thing.
No, it's true.
Yeah,
I to
and I mean
to
just
push this.
even look at I look
push
at
this further.
the California teams, right? The reason the California team succeeded is because Gretzky went down there. They weren't
No,
filling
that's
their
true.
seats before that. Like they need success if they want to last in Arizona, and they are not getting it at all. Sorry, I'll let you
Yeah.
go now. I just wanted to make that point.
No, it's yeah, no, that's true. And I mean, I do think that's a big thing, but it's also just like whether it's because of that or not, they haven't had any support. And I do think it's amidst a time where there are a ton of markets that want the NHL. Specifically, like Salt Lake City is a big one that's made a big push recently
Oh,
in terms of they're looking for an expansion franchise or potentially a relocation of the Coyotes. Same thing with Quebec City has always been in there. There's a whole bunch of teams a whole bunch of cities that would love an NHL team. And so the reason we're talking about the Coyotes today is it came out this week that this is an Elliot Friedman report talking about basically there's a parcel of land in Phoenix that is being appraised by the Arizona State Lands Department Board of Appeals. This
Wow.
is getting into
This
some
is
deep
serious.
stuff here. So they're basically Arizona has this land, they're auctioning off this land, and this is where the Coyotes hope to build their new stadium. And this is basically their last shot. If the Coyotes, so this is what this Sportsnet article says, is that if the Coyotes lose the auction, the club would be forced down the other path in the fork of the road, and that path could include relocation. And Elliot Friedman specifically said, quote, there was an admission that the status quo cannot continue. As a result of that, especially if the Coyotes don't win this auction, relocation will be on the table. And now, even though the Coyotes relocation has been a topic of conversation for years, I think this is the first time, like you said it before the podcast, Simon, where it's the first time that they've actually come out and said something. It feels like it's the first time where there's been concrete, like, this could legitimately happen. Because they can't play in Mullet Arena anymore.
But it's kind of awesome.
But it's
not
embarrassing,
money.
too.
It's embarrassing and a money thing. That's what it is. Because teams make a lot of money off of selling 20,000, 20,000 tickets every single game, and Mullet Arena doesn't even fill half of that. So it's the type of
Doesn't
thing
even fill a
where,
quarter, right?
yeah,
Like-
isn't it like 6 or
It's
7,000?
like 5,000. Ooh, I'll double check that. I thought it was like 5. I'll double
I'm
check that.
talking out of my ass. I thought it was 6 or 7, but that's ballpark. So I think I really like the Salt. What do you say, sorry?
It's actually for NHL hockey 4,600.
Wow, that is brutal. There are
It's embarrassing.
WHL teams
It's embarrassing.
who double that, triple
Yeah,
that.
it's
There are
embarrassing.
WHL teams who triple that. Like it is absolutely embarrassing.
It's seriously
and,
embarrassing.
And I think for as much as Bettman loves the Coyotes, I think he might have to say goodbye to his prized possession, because I think the Salt Lake City one is probably what's going to happen. I think that's probably the most realistic, as much as everyone wants Quebec. Even with all of the people who have called for the Quebec one to happen, we have not seen an owner outright say, I am willing to buy your least successful franchise just to bring hockey to my city. That has not happened in Quebec. And nothing like that has ever happened close to like that being like that in Quebec. And that's what we're seeing in Salt Lake City right now. And in Bettman's Mr. Krabs' brain, when he looks at that, he thinks money. So he is going to instantly take that if they have to move. So I think realistically, the next place that will be getting an NHL team will probably be Salt Lake City, which is kind of.
Yeah.
I don't know if they might. I don't know if
I think that's
most
a cool location for
I think it
a
is
team.
cool. I don't disagree. I don't know if they're the most deserving. I think I just talked enough about Quebec to kind of give you an idea on that. But it's just like
Yeah.
I think. I don't think realistically, for one, like I said, they haven't made any sort of like groundwork that Salt Lake City has even attempted to try and make on one side of it. Also, the fact that Bettman hates Canada. Those are two things that are not working in your favor. So I just think, I don't know. I like Salt Lake City. I think it would work out pretty well. I mean, we'd have to see what. It always comes down to like what the team designs and all that. I don't know if they've at all tried to like put anything together. I'm curious now, so I
probably
might
not.
I
They
might
don't
I might
even-
look. But
I'm sure they haven't because it's just so early in the like they
Oh,
haven't even
probably.
they haven't been approved of anything. It's just getting an ownership group together. I do think like this will be very interesting. So the auction, I think they said is scheduled for around June, and this really is like an all or nothing, because obviously it's really exciting to talk about the relocation price fix because we're all tired of seeing the Coyotes and would rather see something else. Um, no disrespect to any of the actual Coyotes fans out there if there are any, but there is a real possibility that if the Coyotes do win this land auction, which obviously I'm not a big like player on the Arizona land auction market, I don't know what that competition is going to look like.
Yeah.
But if they win it, then they're probably staying in Arizona for the next 40.
But
50
that's
years.
been
We'll probably
that's
never
been
see
the
them move.
issue for the last little bit, because it's not just the team betting on it; it's the whole city. Does the city actually care at this point? Because they've shown that they
and
don't.
that Yeah, and because there was just like specifically, I don't remember what the referendum was for. There was like a referendum of some sort where it was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
do we like basically this is way more complicated than this, but it was basically like, do we want the Coyotes to stay or do we care? And the vote was no.
Yeah.
I'll look
Would
at
you
that
like to
specifically.
hear a list of Reddit's best ideas for what the team might be called? Just for funsies.
Hmm.
So the first one up at the top here, Utah Coyotes. No. Bet you didn't think of that one. Let's see. The Salt Lake City Soakers.
No.
Let's see. What else is on here? Oh, how do you even say that? The Wasatch Sasquatch. Won't happen, but it should, is what it says on there. The Salt Lake City, we hosted an Olympics one time. The Salt Lake City 2000 Tours. The Salt Lake City Deuces. The Salt Lake City, what was the other one I saw? Oh, where was it? There was a really good one. The Salt Lake City bitch pigeons. Like, there's a lot of good things out in the world right now as for what potential teams.
Oh, yeah.
And I am for all of them. I think they're all great. Except for the Coyotes one. That one's gross.
Yeah, that is gross.
I wonder if that's a
So, like-
possibility. If they'll keep Coyotes, because that is whack.
No, it doesn't fit at all. It doesn't fit at all. There's no deserts in Utah.
You don't need deserts to have Coyotes.
No, that's true. I don't
Calgary
know. It
has
doesn't fit the vibe.
coyotes.
I think of Utah. Yes, I know.
I look in my
but, like,
backyard
I feel
right
like-
now, I'll see a coyote.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that I just to touch on something I said before, in terms of the referendum thing, it was the potential site in Tempe, and that got shut down. 57% of people, I believe it said no to that. So yes, like people in Arizona have specifically they voted on it and have said no. Again, I think it's been tough to find
Wasn't that 1 or 2 years ago, though?
find a home.
So
That was, I believe, like maybe a year ago.
I wonder if they'll try and call for that again. Like,
Oh.
come on, guys. This is really it.
I doubt it.
I doubt it, too.
I wonder
Yeah.
where the parcel of land is too is interesting, because I know they've tried Glendale, they've tried like they've tried Tempe, and then obviously like originally being the Phoenix Coyotes. I know they've gone all over the place in that same kind of area. It'll be interesting to see, and I mean this is obviously a conversation that'll get brought up a lot more when it happens in terms of like the land auction, and then we can really start to talk about the possibilities of what happens if they lose that. It's interesting to speculate now.
Yeah. Combo up the Utah Jazz with the Utah Rock. There we go. Better than the Coyotes.
Yep. All right. Thank you everybody for watching this week. If you liked hearing what we had to say, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I mean,
Ooh.
it's been
We're becoming real YouTubers now. We're throwing it out there.
Oh, yeah.
Smash
Oh,
that
yeah.
like button.
You know what to do. Also, if you again like hearing our voices but don't like seeing our faces, Fresh Take Network, look that up on your Apple Podcasts or Spotify's, all that stuff. Boom, got it.
Yeah.
As well as Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all the other social medias.
Oh, yeah.
Find us there.
We do
In terms of my
things.
shout out for this week, mine is the Miami Marlins. Now, we don't talk about baseball that much, but I think this is fantastic. And this is, I think, something that all sports should do to create the ultimate fan experience. What the Miami Marlins have done is for the honestly kind of a steal price of $52 per seat, they have given this is an all-you-can-eat ticket. So with this seat, you get unlimited concessions. So you can go to, I think it's limited to like a certain amount per trip, but
boo.
you don't like this?
No,
This is
let the people
fantastic.
eat.
Yeah.
Don't limit it. That's
I mean,
lame.
like, I don't think it's I think it's limited per. I don't remember what the actual thing is. I think it's like limited.
What
per
if Joey
trip, but it's
Chestnut
not-
buys this pass?
but I
Like
think it's
he
like-
should be
I think
allowed
that's
to
the
eat
thing.
as
And
many as he wants.
I think that's what it is, though. I think that's what it is. I wish I had like there was a story that talked specifically about. It's the MLB. Nothing happens. I'm sure if I scroll through, I can find it. But like
At least he's honest.
we haven't been talking about the MLB, folks. Okay, maybe I was disrespecting them a little bit too much because I can't find it anymore.
Whatever. Doesn't
But
matter that much.
Basically, I think it's like I don't think it's actually limited. I think it's like per trip or something. Like I don't know what it actually is, but it is legitimately all you can eat. I do think the one potential thing is it's like after the 7th inning you can't go back, which that may be a little bit dumb, but
That's
anyways,
kind
I
of
think
how most sporting events work, though. Like, for example, like the
Yeah,
Saddle Dome
yeah.
closes all of their concessions after the second intermission. So,
yeah,
kind of the same thing.
So it's like because why would you be going there anyways?
pretty much.
But I think it's a fantastic idea. I think more places should do that because I just really like the idea of like fucking chowing down on 50
Yeah,
hot
that
dogs.
is pretty
Just why
funny,
not?
isn't it? Just like imagine a dude like you just look to your left and just think you just go, oh, that guy got the food pass. You just see him.
That guy
you
got
just,
the all you can eat.
He's got himself like. Does that apply to drinks? I don't know. I didn't catch if you said that.
I think it does. I think it does.
That's
I don't
gonna
know.
be a
Again, I think
problem.
what I found
That's
didn't have a lot of
gonna be
details.
Because, like, I'm just picturing in my head a dude with 15 cups of dome foam walking back to his seats. Like,
Yeah.
it's... although I think that the...
It's
most arenas probably-
non-alcoholic beverages.
Ah,
Non-alcoholic beverages.
that makes sense.
So it's-
Yeah.
Here's the list: hot dogs, chili dogs, nachos with cheese, chili nachos,
That'd be a
cheeseburgers,
problem.
popcorn, peanuts, cookies, non-alcoholic beverages, and water.
Oh, I'm telling you. I would eat so many nachos with cheese. Nachos. Holy smokes. That'd be an issue.
Yeah.
It'd be game over. It'd be game over. No, I'd
Yep.
die. That would be it. Simon would be the first person to die because the Miami Marlins couldn't stop feeding me nachos. Put that on a headline.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, my
You got one?
shout out, not real. It's more of a negative shout out because I'm pissed about it. Is the fact I'm mad at Alberta weather. It was so nice for like so
Okay.
long, and then like the world found out that I was going on a road trip this weekend. But you know what? Here is the entire Arctic dumped on your head, LeBron James style, and I just had to sit here and go, "Oh, thanks. I guess that'll be fun to drive the QE2 on. Can't wait for that. It's gonna be so awesome. Going 80. It's gonna be great. I'm so excited. Yeah. Okay. Screw you, buddy. Here, one
So
second.
let's see
One
the
second.
temperatures in the.
Here, I'll give you
There we
the.
go.
I'll give you that.
There we go. This is where I live. It's a lot nicer over here. So this is what happens when you don't live in Calgary. I guess the direct comparison would be like if we want to see what you're looking at is the this.
I'm sorry. I'll send you back. Yeah. It's
we
not
go.
even cold. It is just
The
literally
snow.
an absurd amount of snow. like it feel like we had no snow for a very large portion of February, and I'd even say March. Like we had a very, very warm second half of winter, and then out of nowhere, just like in the last like day or two, we have just gotten the whole winter worth of snow. I mean, that photo of the dude, that was just a stock image. I thought it was funny. But, like, that's pretty accurate to what it looked like with me shoveling my walk earlier today. It was not fun, and
And I've been going out on bike rides, I've been wearing shorts. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, no, I've got family driving out to where we're going first, and they're doing that today. They're probably even more unlucky than I am, because I think it's going to be a lot better off because I'm going up Saturday and meeting them up there when I don't have to worry about any work-related things. So I just, like, in that sense, it probably won't be as bad, but for them, I'm sure that drive was a whole heck of a lot of fun. Yeah, anyway, that's my shout-out. Very, very fun shout-out. Gotta love snow. Snow's great, except for when there's an absurd amount of it and it's minus 35. Then I don't like snow. Yeah. It's alright. Have fun with your rain and, like, I don't know, the Canucks or something. Although they're kind of good now. God damn it. You Vancouverites get it all good. Go jump in the ocean, you asshole. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for watching. If you made it to the end, go subscribe or something. I don't know. Do something with it. Do a flip. Actually, yeah. Instead of subscribing, I want you to do a flip. You don't have to prove it to me.
Cool.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. I'll believe you if you say it. And that's all it'll take. So thanks for watching.
Comment, I did a flip if you made it this
And then I'll do like that. I'll just send back the emoji of just like, and then that's gonna be the entire interaction. Like that'll be that is what is on the line here, folks. If you do a flip, like most of your crappy YouTubers, they'll tell you to like, oh, if you made it to the end of the video, comment squid. No. I want to know whether or not you accomplished said flip. That is what I care about. And if you lie, I will know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for watching.